The United Nations says 2.5 million people have fled Ukraine since Russia began its attack on February 23rd. 2.5 million in just 18 days. Many refugees have gone to Poland, while 123,000 are in Germany. Germany's foreign minister says that number actually could be much higher because of no border checks with Poland. The Vatican, meanwhile, says it's willing to do everything possible to help achieve a ceasefire in Ukraine. Pope Francis's appeal for an immediate ceasefire was relayed to the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. The Pope visited the Russian embassy to the Vatican in an unprecedented gesture to communicate his concern over the attack on Ukraine. So far, multiple talks between Russia and Ukraine have not led to any meaningful de-escalation. And Ukrainian officials say Russia has violated temporary ceasefires, resulting in the death of several fleeing civilians.
The strength of our alliance has endured and is now bigger and stronger than ever.
That's Vice President Kamala Harris talking about NATO during her overseas trip to reaffirm U.S. support for its NATO allies. Those remarks coming yesterday while holding a bilateral meeting with the president of Romania. Let's bring in now Christine Berzenia for more insight. She's a senior fellow and head of geopolitics with the Alliance for Securing Democracy. Christine, thanks for joining us. How do you believe the NATO alliance has been holding up throughout this war? It seems like Russian President Vladimir Putin might have unintentionally strengthened the connection between the U.S., its NATO allies, and Ukraine.
You're absolutely right. The unity that the transatlantic alliance has shown really since the beginning of the consideration or the risk of this war, we saw a NATO foreign ministerial in December in which this really came to the table with the U.S. saying we think there's a very good chance that this kind of major invasion could happen. In the months since then, and really in the last week since the invasion itself, we have seen countries that have been lagging behind in military spending like Germany step up and completely change its policies. President Trump wanted to get this done throughout his presidency, and it's President Putin who got it done. For Chancellor Scholz to get up and say, we are spending 2% starting now, we're doubling our military budget this year, that is something that he certainly wasn't expecting from Germany. That kind of unity and serious investment in defense and provision of weaponry to Ukraine is a tremendous show of strength and not what President Putin was expecting. He was looking at Afghanistan and the less than smooth, hurried, chaotic withdrawal of the allies from Afghanistan at the end of last summer and decided, perhaps this is my chance. Look, that's what NATO is made of. That is not what NATO is made of. And we see that today in the way that NATO really has gotten its act together individually as states and together. The sanctions have hit Russia very hard. But what President Putin is expecting right now is for the members to start squabbling, start saying, oh, this kind of hurts. Maybe this is fine. We shouldn't take any more steps. That is what he assumes the West will do. It will splinter. It will start licking its wounds. It is weak. It has no character. It doesn't want Ukraine as badly as he wants Ukraine. Then it's up to the West to continue providing the weapons and accelerating the sanctions to say, no, we mean it.
U.S. officials have been warning this week about Russia potentially using chemical and biological weapons against Ukraine. How concerned are you about what Putin might resort to, as Russian forces have likely had more difficulty overtaking Ukrainian cities than they expected? Another thing that was not anticipated.
President Putin, when he and the Russian media empire starts talking about the risk of biological or chemical weapons, which he attributes to the Ukraine or the allies in Ukraine, or when he talks about nuclear war, yes, this is a sign that this is on his mind, that he might be toying with this idea. You had chemical weapons used in Syria, chlorine gas, nerve agents. These aren't supposed to be used. That's certainly, I mean, as this entire invasion and targeting of civilians is entirely against the law, international laws and norms. However, you know, he has a track record and partners like in Syria who have done this in the past. So it's something to keep an eye on. At the same time, what is going to make him feel that he can that he shouldn't start messing with NATO, with Ukraine, is for NATO to keep saying, you won't get away with things. We have not been that good with keeping you to account. You can say rightly that the taking of Crimea in 2014, reaction to the 2008 war in Georgia, or to Putin's behavior in Syria did not receive nearly the outcry that it should have. And perhaps those were signs that he could go about this invasion. But now it's different. And the more the West makes clear that it is not going to tolerate and is going to provide weapons, and it's clear from the allies that they will not put their own troops on the ground in Ukraine, but everything else is game. And that will make Putin think twice.
Yeah. And so looking at this kind of more theoretically, the bigger picture, how much could Russia attacking Ukraine, which is a democracy, potentially threaten democracies across the world? Or is it the opposite, that it'll, as you had been mentioning earlier, only strengthen alliances and democracies, regardless of whether Putin ends up getting what he wants in Ukraine? And how much does it factor into the level of involvement that the U.S. specifically should have moving forward?
This is about Ukraine, but it's about democracy. The reason that President Putin is unhappy with Ukraine, is unhappy with President Zelensky and his cabinet, is because they believe in democracy, they believe in the agency and ability of their citizens to set their course. This is exactly what President Putin does not believe in as a political concept. He does not believe in the agency of his citizens. He has deprived them of having any say in anything that matters in Russia for decades. He doesn't like that Ukraine is a country that, until his invasion, was prospering under a democratic system, prospering economically, prospering militarily, prospering in every possible way, because it's an example of how democracies do well, how democracies can serve their citizens, and the fact that the Ukrainian people are rising up against him and want nothing to do with the kind of government, with the kind of regime, with the kind of life one would live in Russia. That is a threat to President Putin and to the kind of system he represents. Of course, China is watching this too. It's not just about Ukraine. Currently, yes, of course, it is about Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, but why are they targeted? Why does China have Russia's back right now? It's because in Ukraine, this is a country where people have agency, where people matter. And in Russia and in China, people don't.
Yeah, and we interviewed a member of the Ukrainian parliament earlier, and one point she made is that they are united by freedom. And I think that's something a lot of people could say. All right, thank you, Christine Berzenia, with the Alliance for Securing Democracy. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.